Marcus Thompson stood in his penthouse bathroom, staring at his reflection as he deliberately messed up his usually perfect hair. The $50,000 Rolex came off first, followed by his Italian leather shoes. He pulled on worn jeans and a faded t-shirt from the back of his closet, clothes he'd bought specifically for this moment. Tonight, he would discover the truth about Victoria Sterling, his fiancée of 6 months. The woman who claimed to love him for who he was, not what he owned. The woman who would soon inherit half of Thompson Industries if their marriage went through. But first, she had to pass one final test. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The elevator descended from the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower, carrying Marcus Thompson away from his billion-dollar empire and toward the most important performance of his life. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind from their conversation 3 days earlier. "Boy, you're about to marry a woman who sees dollar signs instead of your soul. Mark my words." Harold Thompson had built Thompson Industries from nothing, starting with a single construction contract in 1962. Now, at 85, he possessed an uncanny ability to read people that had served him well in both business and life. His concerns about Victoria had been growing stronger by the day. "She only touches you when there's a camera around," Harold had observed during their last family dinner. "And have you noticed how her eyes light up when she talks about the wedding expenses, but go dull when you mention your childhood memories?" Marcus had defended Victoria then, but the seeds of doubt were already planted. She had indeed seemed more excited about the 7-figure wedding budget than about actually becoming his wife. When he'd suggested a simple ceremony, she'd laughed it off as adorable, but insisted they needed something befitting their status. The test had been Harold's idea, inspired by a similar situation from his own youth. "Pretend you've lost everything," the old man had suggested. "See if she stands by you when the money's gone. A woman who truly loves you will hold you tighter when times get tough, not push you away." Marcus emerged from the elevator into the parking garage, bypassing his collection of luxury vehicles for a beat-up Honda Civic he'd purchased under a false name. The car barely started, coughing to life with a sound that would have horrified his usual mechanic. 20 minutes later, he pulled up to Rosario's Italian Kitchen, a modest family restaurant where Victoria had agreed to meet him for what she believed would be a celebration dinner. She'd been expecting him to announce the final details of their honeymoon plans, a 3-week tour of European capitals with a budget that could fund a small country. Instead, she was about to hear that Marcus Thompson, her billionaire fiancé, had lost everything. Victoria Sterling sat at their usual corner table, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled and her designer dress probably costing more than most people's monthly rent. She checked her phone constantly, texting what Marcus assumed were updates to her society friends about their evening plans. "Victoria," Marcus said as he approached, noting how her expression shifted from anticipation to confusion as she took in his appearance. "Marcus, what on earth are you wearing?" She looked around nervously, as if worried someone might see them together. "And where's your car? I didn't see the Bentley outside." He slid into the seat across from her, his hands shaking slightly, though whether from nerves or anger he couldn't tell. "We need to talk. Something's happened." Victoria's perfectly manicured fingers gripped her wine glass. "What do you mean? You're scaring me." "The company, it's gone, Victoria. Thompson Industries is bankrupt." The color drained from her face, but not in the way he'd expected. There was no concern for his well-being, no immediate questions about what had happened or how he was coping. Instead, her eyes darted around the restaurant as if calculating escape routes. "That's impossible," she whispered harshly. "Your grandfather would never let that happen." "Grandfather's in the hospital, heart attack 2 days ago. While he was unconscious, our biggest investor pulled out, and it triggered a cascade. By the time the lawyers finished, there was nothing left." The lies came easily. Marcus had rehearsed this story dozens of times.
Victoria's breathing became rapid and shallow. But the wedding, the deposits, my dress alone cost $40,000. Not once had she asked about Harold's condition or expressed sympathy for what Marcus was supposedly going through. Her priorities were crystallizing with brutal clarity. "I'll have to sell the penthouse, the cars, everything," Marcus continued, watching her face carefully. "I might be able to keep one of the smaller properties, but Victoria, I'm essentially broke. I'll probably have to get a regular job just to survive." She stood up so quickly that her chair nearly toppled backward. "I need air. This is too much to process." Marcus watched through the restaurant window as Victoria paced outside, her phone pressed to her ear. Even from a distance, he could see the animated gestures of someone in full panic mode. She wasn't calling to check on his grandfather's health or to offer emotional support. She was making contingency plans. After 15 minutes, she returned to the table with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Darling, I've been thinking," she said, her voice artificially sweet. "Maybe we should postpone the wedding, just until you get back on your feet, of course. These things take time, and I wouldn't want to be a burden during such a difficult period." A burden? Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. "Victoria, I thought we were partners. For better or worse, isn't that what marriage means?" She laughed, but the sound was brittle and unnatural. "Oh, sweetheart, that's so romantic. But be practical. How would we live? I am certain standards, and frankly, so do you. You can't expect us to just pretend that money doesn't matter. So, if I can't provide the lifestyle you're accustomed to, you don't want to marry me?" Victoria's mask began to slip. "Don't be dramatic. I'm being realistic. Love doesn't pay for designer clothes or maintain social standing. You'll thank me later for not tying you down when you need to focus on rebuilding." She gathered her purse, preparing to leave. "I think it's best if we take a break, until you sort this mess out." Marcus sat in stunned silence as Victoria Sterling, the woman he'd been planning to spend his life with, walked out of the restaurant without a backward glance. The engagement ring she'd left on the table caught the light, its 3-carat diamond reflecting the overhead fluorescence like a tiny, expensive mirror of his shattered illusions. The waitress who had been serving them approached cautiously. She was young, probably early 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and kind eyes that showed genuine concern. "Sir, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus looked up at her, trying to focus. Her name tag read Emma Rodriguez. She wore the standard restaurant uniform, but there was something about her demeanor that suggested this job was a means to an end, not a career choice. "I'm fine," he said automatically, then caught himself. "Actually, no, I'm not fine at all." Emma glanced around the restaurant, then pulled out the chair Victoria had vacated. "Mind if I sit for a minute? My manager's in the back, and you look like you could use someone to talk to." There was no judgment in her voice, no curiosity about the expensive ring sitting abandoned on the table. Just genuine human kindness from a complete stranger.
"My fiancée just left me," Marcus said, surprised at how easily the words came. "She found out I lost my job, and apparently that changes everything." Emma's expression softened. "I'm sorry. That must hurt terribly. The worst part is, I should have seen it coming. There were signs, but I ignored them. My grandfather tried to warn me, but I thought I knew better."
"Grandfathers have a way of seeing through people's pretenses," Emma said with a small smile. "Mine used to say that people show you who they really are when they think no one important is watching."
Marcus studied her face, noting the absence of makeup and the calluses on her hands that spoke of hard work. "What about you? Working here to pay for school?"
"Medical school, actually. 3rd year at State University. I work here 4 nights a week and weekends to cover expenses." She gestured around the restaurant. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me from drowning in debt."
The contrast between Emma and Victoria couldn't have been starker. One woman fled at the first sign of financial trouble, while the other worked multiple jobs to build a future based on her own merit.
"Medical school is expensive," That's a lot of pressure.
Emma shrugged. My parents sacrificed everything to give me opportunities they never had. My dad works 2 jobs, and my mom cleans houses. The least I can do is make their dreams worth it. A crash from the kitchen interrupted their conversation, followed by angry shouting in Italian. Emma jumped up immediately.
That's probably Tony dropping another tray. I should get back to work. She hesitated, then added, "But hey, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here most evenings. Sometimes it helps to vent to a stranger."
As Emma hurried away to deal with the kitchen crisis, Marcus found himself genuinely smiling for the first time in hours. Here was someone who understood real struggle, real sacrifice, real loyalty to family. Someone who worked hard for everything she had and didn't expect the world to hand her anything. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Had time to think. This is really for the best. Hope you understand. V. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Marcus deleted the message without responding and looked around Rosario's with new eyes. The restaurant was warm and inviting, filled with the sounds of families sharing meals and friends catching up over wine. It was real in a way that his usual haunts, exclusive clubs and 5-star establishments, had never been. He ordered coffee and a slice of tiramisu, not because he was hungry, but because he wanted to stay. For the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe without the weight of expectations and social obligations pressing down on him. Emma returned with his order, moving efficiently between tables while maintaining a smile for every customer. She refilled water glasses, cleared plates, and handled a complaint about an overcooked pasta dish with grace and professionalism that would have impressed the staff at any luxury restaurant. When she passed his table again, Marcus caught her attention. "Emma, thank you. For listening, I mean. It meant more than you know." She paused, balancing a tray of dishes. Everyone deserves kindness when they're going through a tough time. That's just being human. Just being human. When was the last time someone in his social circle had expressed such a simple, genuine sentiment? In his world, every interaction was calculated, every kindness had an angle. But Emma's compassion seemed to come from a place of authentic care for others. As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself observing the restaurant's dynamics. He watched Emma handle a difficult customer who complained loudly about the wait time, never losing her temper or professionalism. He saw her slip extra breadsticks to a family with young children and personally ensure that an elderly man's soup was heated to exactly the right temperature. This was someone who understood service not as servitude, but as a way of caring for people. Someone who took pride in doing her job well, regardless of how others might perceive it. Around 10 o'clock, the restaurant began to empty. Marcus had long since finished his coffee, but Emma hadn't asked him to leave. Instead, she'd quietly refilled his cup twice and left him to his thoughts. When she finally approached with the check, Marcus looked up at her with genuine curiosity. "Can I ask you something? Why are you being so kind to a stranger who's probably taking up valuable table space?" Emma considered the question seriously. "Because you looked lost when I first saw you, and because kindness doesn't cost anything, but it can mean everything to someone who needs it. Just being human. When was the last time someone in his social circle had expressed such a simple, genuine sentiment? In his world, every interaction was calculated, every kindness had an angle. But Emma's compassion seemed to come from a place of authentic care for others. As the evening wore on, Marcus found himself observing the restaurant's dynamics. He watched Emma handle a difficult customer who complained loudly about the wait time, never losing her temper or professionalism. He saw her slip extra breadsticks to a family with young children and personally ensure that an elderly man's soup was heated to exactly the right temperature. This was someone who understood service not as servitude, but as a way of caring for people. Someone who took pride in doing her job well, regardless of how others might perceive it. Around 10 o'clock, the restaurant began to empty. Marcus had long since finished his coffee, but Emma hadn't asked him to leave. Instead, she'd quietly refilled his cup twice and left him to his thoughts. When she finally approached with the check, Marcus looked up at her with genuine curiosity. "Can I ask you something? Why are you being so kind to a stranger who's probably taking up valuable table space?" Emma considered the question seriously. "Because you looked lost when I first saw you, and because kindness doesn't cost anything, but it can mean everything to someone who needs it." Marcus paid his bill, leaving a tip that was generous, but not suspiciously so, for someone who supposedly lost everything. As he prepared to leave, Emma touched his arm gently. "I know it probably doesn't feel like it right now, but maybe losing someone who only wanted you for your money is actually a blessing. The right person will love you for who you are, not what you can provide." Her words hit him with unexpected force. In trying to test Victoria's love, he discovered something far more valuable, a reminder of what genuine human connection actually looked like. As Marcus drove home in the sputtering Honda, he realized that his grandfather's test had worked perfectly, just not in the way he'd expected. He'd set out to expose Victoria's true nature and succeeded beyond his wildest imagination. But more importantly, he'd met someone who embodied everything he'd thought he wanted in a partner: integrity, kindness, intelligence, and strength. The question now was what to do with this knowledge. Emma believed he was a recently unemployed man facing financial ruin. How could he reveal the truth without seeming like just another wealthy man trying to buy affection? How could he prove that his interest in her was genuine when his entire interaction with her had been based on deception? For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Thompson faced a problem that money couldn't solve. He would have to earn Emma's trust and affection the same way she'd earned his, through authentic actions and genuine character. The real test was just beginning. Marcus spent the next 3 days wrestling with his conscience while maintaining the facade of a broke man desperately seeking employment. He'd crafted an elaborate backstory about his supposed financial ruin, complete with fake rejection letters from various companies and a carefully curated wardrobe of discount store clothing. His grandfather Harold had been released from the hospital. The heart attack story was fabricated, though the old man was dealing with minor chest pains from stress. When Marcus visited him at his estate, Harold's eyes twinkled with mischief despite his obvious concern for his grandson. "So Victoria showed her true colors faster than a chameleon on plaid," Harold chuckled, pouring himself a scotch from his private collection. "Can't say I'm surprised, but I am sorry you had to learn the hard way." "The worst part isn't losing her," Marcus admitted, pacing around his grandfather's study. "It's realizing how blind I was, and now there's this waitress." Harold raised an eyebrow. "Ah, the plot thickens. Tell me about this girl." Marcus described Emma, her kindness, her work ethic, her genuine concern for a stranger's well-being. Harold listened intently, occasionally nodding with approval. "Sounds like she has character," Harold said finally, "something that's been sorely lacking in your social circle lately. But son, you've built this deception. How do you plan to dig yourself out without destroying any chance you might have with her?" "I don't know," Marcus confessed. "If I tell her the truth now, she'll think I was testing her, like some kind of experiment. If I keep lying, you'll be building a relationship on quicksand," Harold finished. "My advice? Get to know her as the man you're pretending to be. If she can love that version of you, broke, vulnerable, uncertain, then maybe she can love the real you too." Meanwhile, across town, Emma Rodriguez was having her own complicated evening. She'd arrived at Rosario's early to help with inventory, but her mind kept drifting to the broken-hearted man from a few nights ago. There had been something about him that seemed different from the usual customers, a depth behind his eyes that suggested layers beneath the surface. "You're distracted tonight, Misha," observed Rosa DeLuca, the restaurant owner's wife and Emma's unofficial mentor. Rosa had immigrated from Sicily 40 years ago and possessed an intuitive understanding of people that rivaled any psychology textbook. "There was this customer the other night," Emma said, counting napkin dispensers. "His fiancée left him when he lost his job. I felt so bad for him." Rosa's weathered hands paused in their task of organizing silverware. "And you're thinking about him, why? We get sad stories every night here." Emma couldn't explain it fully, even to herself. He just seemed genuine, like he was really hurting, not just feeling sorry for himself. And when I talked to him, he listened, really listened. Most people hear me say I'm in medical school and either get intimidated or start treating me like their personal doctor. Ah, Rosa nodded knowingly. So this man saw Emma the person, not Emma the future doctor or Emma the waitress. Something like that. Rosa studied her young employee with the keen eye of someone who'd raised 5 children and helped countless others navigate life's complications. Be careful, Kara. Men who seem too good to be true often are. But sometimes, she shrugged philosophically, sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need when we're ready to receive it. That same evening, Marcus returned to Rosario's. He'd spent hours perfecting his appearance, rumpled clothes that looked like he'd worn them to multiple job interviews, scuffed shoes that suggested financial hardship, and an expression of determined hopelessness that he'd practiced in the mirror.
Emma was surprised to see him again, but her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Hey, how are you holding up?" "Better, I think," Marcus said, settling into the same corner booth. "I've been thinking about what you said, about it maybe being a blessing in disguise." "And?" "You might be right. I'm starting to see things differently." He gestured around the restaurant. "Like this place. I never would have come here before. Well, before everything changed. But it has more warmth than most of the expensive restaurants I used to frequent." Emma poured him coffee without being asked. Money doesn't buy atmosphere. Rosa and Tony built this place with love, and it shows. Their regulars are like family. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Tony DeLuca emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. He was a compact man in his 60s with silver hair and intense brown eyes that missed nothing. "Emma tells me you're looking for work," Tony said, sliding into the booth uninvited. "What kind of experience did you got?" Marcus hadn't expected this direct approach. His mind raced through possible responses that would maintain his cover while being truthful about his skills. Management, mostly, corporate stuff, problem-solving, team leadership, strategic planning. Tony snorted. "Fancy words. Can you wash dishes without breaking them?" What? "Dishes. Can you wash 'em? My night dishwasher quit yesterday, found a better job at some chain restaurant. I need someone reliable who won't disappear when something shinier comes along." Emma looked between the two men with interest. She hadn't expected Tony to make such an offer, but she could see the kindness behind his gruff exterior. "The pay's not much," Tony continued. "15 an hour, plus you can eat 1 meal per shift. But it's honest work, and if you prove yourself, maybe we can talk about other opportunities." Marcus felt a moment of panic. Actually working in a restaurant kitchen? He'd never washed a dish in his life. His penthouse had a housekeeper who handled such mundane tasks. But Emma was watching him with encouraging eyes, and backing down now would shatter his carefully constructed image. "When can I start?" he heard himself saying. Tony's weathered face cracked into a smile. "Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock sharp. Emma can show you the ropes." After Tony returned to the kitchen, Emma leaned across the table conspiratorially. That was really generous of him. Tony doesn't offer jobs lightly. He must have seen something he liked in you. "What if I'm terrible at it?" Marcus asked, his nervousness entirely genuine. "Everyone's terrible at first. I dropped 3 trays my first week and accidentally served pasta sauce to a customer who ordered marinara." Rosa laughed so hard she nearly cried. Emma's smile was reassuring. "The important thing is showing up and trying your best." The next evening, Marcus arrived at Rosario's 15 minutes early, having watched several YouTube videos on proper dishwashing techniques. He'd also purchased actual work boots and clothes that could withstand kitchen conditions, though he'd made sure to rough them up slightly to maintain his broke persona. Emma met him at the employee entrance, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of her server uniform. She looked younger and more relaxed, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Ready for your first day in the glamorous world of food service?" she teased. The kitchen was a revelation of controlled chaos. Pans sizzled, orders were shouted in rapid Italian, and the dishwashing station looked like a mechanical monster with multiple spray nozzles and industrial-sized soap dispensers.
Okay, so the system is pretty simple, Emma explained, pulling on rubber gloves. Scrape the plates first, food waste goes in this bin for composting. Then you rinse in the first sink, wash in the second with the hot soapy water, rinse again in the third, and everything goes through the sanitizing dishwasher for the final cycle. Marcus nodded, trying to commit the process to memory while fighting off thoughts about the bacteria count on the dishes he was about to handle. The key is speed without sacrificing cleanliness, Emma continued. During dinner rush, plates come back faster than you think possible. Don't panic, just find your rhythm. For the first hour, Marcus felt like he was drowning in suds and ceramic. His expensive watch, which he'd forgotten to remove, got soaked within minutes. Plates seemed to multiply exponentially, and he couldn't understand how such a small restaurant could generate so many dirty dishes. Emma checked on him periodically, offering encouragement and correcting his technique when he tried to skip steps to save time. "You're trying too hard," she observed during a brief lull. "Washing dishes is like meditation if you let it be. Focus on the task, not the quantity." Gradually, Marcus began to find the rhythm Emma had mentioned. There was something oddly satisfying about transforming grimy plates into sparkling clean ones. His hands, soft from a lifetime of privilege, quickly developed calluses and cuts from the harsh detergents and sharp utensils. During his break, Emma sat with him in the small employee area behind the kitchen. She'd brought him a sandwich from the kitchen, nothing fancy, just fresh bread with tomatoes, mozzarella, and basil. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Better than expected," Marcus said honestly. "It's different from what I'm used to, but there's something honest about it. You do the work, you see immediate results." Emma studied his face. "You know, you're not what I expected when Tony offered you this job." "What do you mean?" "Most people in desperate financial situations would have jumped at any opportunity, but you seemed almost surprised by the offer, like you weren't used to people helping you." "I guess I've been let down by people recently. Your kindness, all of your kindness here, it's been unexpected." "Well, you'll find that most of us working class folks look out for each other. We have to. Though I have to admit, for someone who's supposedly been working corporate jobs, you have very soft hands." Marcus looked down at his hands, realizing his mistake. Even after one night of dishwashing, they still showed evidence of his privileged lifestyle. I had a desk job, not much manual labor." Emma nodded, but Marcus caught a flicker of something in her eyes, curiosity, perhaps, or the beginning of suspicion. The rest of the shift passed without incident, though Marcus was exhausted by the time closing arrived. His back ached from standing, his hands were raw from the chemicals, and he smelled like industrial soap and leftover garlic.
As they walked out together, Emma surprised him by asking, "Would you like to grab coffee sometime, when we're both not covered in dish soap?" Marcus felt his heart skip. "I'd like that very much." "Great. There's a little cafe near the university that's open late, perfect for broke graduate students and recently unemployed corporate types." As they parted ways in the parking lot, Marcus sat in his beat-up Honda and realized that he was falling for Emma Rodriguez. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she was genuine in a way he'd never experienced. She worked hard, treated people with respect regardless of their status, and possessed a strength of character that made Victoria's superficiality seem even more glaring in comparison. But he was also trapped in a web of lies that grew more complex with each interaction. How long could he maintain the charade? And more importantly, what would happen when Emma inevitably discovered the truth? For now, though, he had dishwashing to master and a coffee date to look forward to. For the first time in years, Marcus Thompson was living in the moment rather than planning his next strategic move. And despite the deception underlying it all, it felt remarkably like freedom. 6 months later, Marcus stood in his office overlooking downtown Chicago, but his attention wasn't on the city skyline. On his desk sat an invitation printed on cream-colored paper, Emma Chen Morrison's wedding invitation. The surname change represented more than marriage. It symbolized her inheritance of David's legacy and the engineering firm they'd rebuilt together. The knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Rebecca entered with a tablet displaying the latest quarterly reports. The Morrison Engineering Partnership exceeded all projections, she announced with satisfaction. Our sustainable infrastructure initiative is now the industry standard, and 3 more cities have signed contracts for smart bridge technology. Marcus smiled, remembering Emma's passionate presentation to his board 6 months ago. She'd walked into that conference room carrying David's original designs and her own vision for the future. Her proposal hadn't just been about business. It had been about honoring her husband's memory while building something meaningful. Schedule a video call with Emma for this afternoon, Marcus instructed. I want to discuss the Portland project timeline. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. You do realize she's getting married tomorrow, right? Most people don't conduct business meetings the day before their wedding. Emma's not most people. That was an understatement. In the months following David's case resolution, Emma had transformed from a grieving widow into a formidable businesswoman. She'd completed her engineering degree through an accelerated program using David's notes and her own determination to master complex structural concepts. Her combination of technical knowledge and genuine care for public safety had impressed even Marcus's most skeptical board members. The partnership between Whitfield Technologies and Morrison Engineering had begun as Marcus's way of ensuring Emma's financial security. It had evolved into something neither of them had expected, a revolutionary approach to infrastructure development that prioritized both innovation and community impact. Marcus's assistant buzzed through the intercom. Mr. Whitfield, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. Send them in. Dorothy Chen entered the office looking elegant in a navy dress. At 72, David's mother had become an unofficial grandmother figure to half of Chicago's engineering community. Her foundation for supporting families of public servants had grown from Emma's insurance settlement into a multi-million-dollar organization. Hello, Marcus. I hope you don't mind the surprise visit. Not at all. Please, sit down. Can I get you anything? Dorothy settled into the chair across from his desk, her eyes twinkling with the same warmth that had comforted him at David's funeral. I wanted to thank you personally for everything you've done for Emma, and for David's memory. Emma did all the hard work. I just provided resources. Don't minimize your role. Dorothy's voice carried gentle authority. You could have walked away after the truth came out. Most people would have. Instead, you stayed and fought for justice when Emma was too overwhelmed to fight for herself. Marcus thought back to those early days after David's murder was solved. Emma had been destroyed by the revelation that people she trusted had killed her husband for money. The combination of grief, betrayal, and media attention had almost broken her spirit. She deserved justice, Marcus said simply. Yes, she did. But you didn't owe it to her. You didn't owe David anything either. You stayed because of who you are, not because of what you'd gain. Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped package. Emma asked me to give you this. She said you'd understand what it meant. Marcus unwrapped the gift carefully. Inside was a framed photograph of the new Riverside Bridge, completed using David's original designs with Emma's safety improvements. At the bottom, in Emma's handwriting, were the words, "Built on truth and friendship. Thank you for helping me find both. E." She wanted you to have it before the wedding, Dorothy explained. She said it represents everything David believed in, that good people can build lasting things together. Marcus stared at the photograph, remembering the day the bridge had opened. Emma had insisted on a small ceremony honoring David's contribution. She'd spoken about her husband's vision of infrastructure that served communities rather than just corporate interests. Marcus had stood in the crowd, proud of what they'd accomplished, but acutely aware that he'd almost lost the chance to be part of it. For the first time in years, Marcus asked, "How is she handling everything? The wedding, the business, all of it?" Dorothy's face softened with maternal pride. She's happy, really, genuinely happy, for the first time since David died. James is good for her, patient, kind, completely supportive of her career. And he genuinely loved David too, which matters to Emma.
James Patterson was a widower and former colleague of David's who'd testified during Harrison's trial. His quiet strength and shared understanding of loss had gradually drawn Emma out of her protective shell. Their relationship had developed slowly, built on friendship and mutual respect rather than passion. It was exactly what Emma needed. "I'm glad," Marcus said, meaning it completely. "You know," Dorothy said thoughtfully, "there was a time when I thought you and Emma might, well, that's water under the bridge now." Marcus had wondered about that possibility too. During the months they'd worked together to rebuild Morrison Engineering, there had been moments of connection that felt like more than professional partnership. But Emma's heart was still healing, and Marcus had learned to value their friendship too much to risk complicating it with romance. Emma needed someone who could understand her grief, Marcus said. "James knew David. I only knew the lie I was living. You knew enough to fight for the truth when it mattered." Dorothy's phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at it and laughed. "Emma wants to know if you're planning to attend the wedding tomorrow. She says she's nervous about her presentation to the mayor next week and could use your input on her proposal. Only Emma would be thinking about business presentations at her wedding rehearsal." "Well, are you coming? I know Emma would love to see you there." Marcus hesitated. He'd been invited, of course, but attending felt complicated. Watching Emma marry someone else shouldn't hurt. Their relationship had never been romantic, but the prospect stirred emotions he wasn't ready to examine. "I have a conference call with investors tomorrow," he said finally. Dorothy's knowing look suggested she saw right through his excuse. "Marcus, Emma considers you family. David would have too, if he'd lived to know you. Sometimes the family we choose matters more than the family we're born with." After Dorothy left, Marcus found himself thinking about family and choices. His biological family consisted of distant relatives he saw only at obligatory holiday gatherings. His social circle was largely professional contacts and casual acquaintances. Emma, Dorothy, and even James had become more important to him than people he'd known for decades. That evening, Marcus made an impulsive decision. He called his pilot and arranged for his private jet to be ready early the next morning. If Emma wanted him at her wedding, he'd be there. The ceremony was held at a small church overlooking Lake Michigan. Marcus arrived as guests were taking their seats, slipping into a pew near the back. The setting was intimate and elegant, filled with Emma's volunteer work colleagues, James's engineering friends, and Dorothy's extensive network of community activists. When Emma walked down the aisle, Marcus was struck by her radiance. She wore a simple but beautiful dress, her auburn hair styled in soft waves. But it was her expression that caught his attention, pure joy mixed with peaceful contentment. This wasn't a woman settling for security or trying to replace what she'd lost. This was someone who'd found love again on her own terms. James Patterson waited at the altar with obvious emotion. He was a good man, steady, intelligent, and deeply in love with Emma. More importantly, he supported her ambitions without trying to diminish or control them. During the ceremony, Emma spoke her vows with characteristic directness. "James, you've shown me that love doesn't diminish when it's shared. Loving you doesn't mean I love David less. It means my heart has room for both the past I treasure and the future we're building together."
Marcus felt his throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Emma had articulated something he'd been struggling to understand about his own feelings. His affection for her didn't require romantic expression to be meaningful. Sometimes the deepest connections transcended conventional categories. At the reception, Emma found him during the cocktail hour. She looked stunning and happy, her face glowing with contentment. "You came," she said, embracing him warmly. "I wouldn't miss it. You look beautiful, Emma." "Thank you. And thank you for the wedding gift. The scholarship fund for engineering students was incredibly generous." Marcus had established the David Chen Memorial Scholarship at Emma's alma mater, funding education for students from low-income families pursuing civil engineering degrees. It seemed like the best way to honor a man he'd never met but had come to respect deeply. "David would have wanted to help other young engineers," Marcus said. "He would have, and he would have liked you, Marcus, really liked you."
James approached them, extending his hand to Marcus with genuine warmth. "Thank you for everything you've done for Emma and Morrison Engineering. David would be proud of what you've both built." "David's the one who deserves credit. I just helped implement his vision." "With significant improvements," Emma interjected. "The smart monitoring systems were your idea. So was the community partnership program." As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying the celebration. He danced with Dorothy, shared engineering jokes with James's colleagues, and listened to touching speeches about love, friendship, and new beginnings. During the father-daughter dance, Dorothy had requested a song for her late son. As the music played, she and Emma swayed together, tears flowing freely. The moment was heartbreaking and beautiful, an acknowledgement that joy and sorrow could coexist. Later, as the reception wound down, Emma pulled Marcus aside for a private conversation. "I need to tell you something," she said seriously. "When I first met you at David's funeral, I thought you were someone you weren't. But over these past months, I've gotten to know who you really are. And Marcus Whitfield is a much better man than Michael Torres ever could have been." "Emma, let me finish. You've become one of my dearest friends. You've honored David's memory better than some people who actually knew him. And you've helped me build something meaningful from the worst tragedy of my life." She paused, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I want you to know that you'll always be family to me. Always." Marcus hugged her tightly, overwhelmed by gratitude for the unexpected gift of her friendship. "Thank you for letting me be part of this, all of it." As the reception ended and guests began to leave, Marcus felt a sense of completion he hadn't expected. He'd come to David Chen's funeral by mistake, but that error had led him to exactly where he needed to be. Driving back to Chicago the next morning, Marcus reflected on the past year. His business was more successful than ever, but success now meant more than profit margins and market dominance. It meant using resources to create positive change. It meant choosing relationships over transactions. It meant building things that lasted beyond quarterly reports. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Thank you for being there yesterday. James and I are honeymooning in Italy, David's dream trip. Seems right that we're finally taking it. Looking forward to working on the Portland project when we get back. Love, E." Marcus smiled, typing back, "Enjoy every moment. The Portland bridges will wait." As he reached the city limits, Marcus made another decision. He'd been considering a proposal from the mayor to head a new sustainable development initiative. The position would mean less money, but more meaningful work. For the first time in his career, that trade-off felt not just acceptable, but desirable. He thought about David Chen, a man he'd never met but had changed his life completely. David's legacy lived on through Emma's work, Dorothy's foundation, the bridges he'd designed, and the communities he'd served. But it also lived on through the unexpected friendships forged in the wake of his death. Marcus had gone to the wrong funeral and found exactly what he didn't know he was looking for: a purpose beyond profit, relationships deeper than networking, and the understanding that sometimes the best things in life come from the mistakes that force us to become better than we ever planned to be. The Chicago skyline appeared ahead, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Marcus drove towards his future, carrying the gifts of an accidental friendship and the memory of a good man he'd helped honor. Some wrong turns, he'd learned, lead to exactly the right destination.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.